So today's guest is an expert at building iconic brands and keeping them relevant. A journey from management trainee to managing director. Nikhil Sharma, managing director of Perfetti Van Melle India, is custodian of brands like Alpenliebe, Mentos, Center Fresh, Happydent, Big Babool, and Chlormint. And he's talking to me today about leadership and staying relevant and finding ways to communicate your brand message in the complicated world of digital media. So if you're an aspiring CEO or you're a marketing sort of nerd or you just like bubblegum, this is an episode for you. Now, before we go further, in full transparency, which is how we do things on my team, I must tell you that this is a partnership between me and the brand, but the partnership extends to access to the platform. All of the questions, the content, and the tone is entirely mine. And everyone who's at this table knows it's going to be a tough conversation. So this is a brand who has something to say and is willing to take that risk. Nikhil, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for the preamble. I'm happy to be here. I like the fact that you're all connoisseurs of bubblegum over here.
I think
That's the most important part.
So, when I was when I was reading about your career and thinking about the change that we've had in marketing, right? So, I've had a journey that started off at radio, went into television, did some newspaper, and now largely digital media. And so, along with all of that is advertising that comes with it. And I know things have changed very drastically for people sitting on the other side of the table, especially if you're in marketing, because there used to be a time when you would make a great ad, and you did. You made that Happydent ad, which was the palace where they were all like, they provided the lights. And you release it across all of the major spots on all television channels. And 2 days later, we are all talking about it. Today, the world doesn't work like that anymore. Most people don't have, they have YouTube Premium, and so they're not even watching ads. So how has your job changed? And if you make a great film, how do you get it to reach people?
Yeah, it's from a media consumption perspective, I think the world has really changed, and it's that much tougher now to reach an audience. It's that much more expensive to reach an audience. But the core philosophy behind making an ad for a company like ours, which is sugar confectionery, doesn't really change over time. Even at the time, and we're talking now 15 years back, we were making long format ads not because it gave us personal joy, but we really believed that we needed to break clutter, and we knew that there was two ways to do it. Either you could have a lot of airing of the ad, which we were not able to afford then and not able to afford now, or you could tell the story in a really quirky manner. And the fact that we were selling a 50 paisa, 1 rupee product, made it possible for us to not take ourselves too seriously. The cost of failure wasn't high. We were not a car brand that we had to make one commercial and had to make it work. If it didn't work, we could launch another product. So it was easier for us to take that leap. And we greatly benefited from the fact that we had people like Piyush at the time, Kino, and Prasoon, who were involved in our brand that took a personal interest, right? So we could turn around those commercials and become, which you call iconic, and that's what's really made our brands grow over time. That has not changed even today. Yeah, right. Even now when we make commercials, the idea is to tell a story the way we want to tell it, right? And not fall into the trap of making standard, templated commercial, which we feel are banal. And you're right. I mean, earlier when the ad used to air, friends of ours used to call and say, hey, we have watched your commercial. And now that doesn't happen anymore. But as a marketeer, I'm not too bothered. Because the audience which I intend to reach out has seen the commercial, right?
So let's say for a Chlormint or a Happydent, who is your audience? And how are they watching your commercial?
So a lot of our audience is actually down the pop strata, because we're the base common denominator at 1 rupee.
Yeah, it's a 1 rupee product.
It's a 1 rupee product. Yeah. So, I mean, everybody's consuming it, and we are present in 6 million outlets. Right? We spend a lot of money on digital to reach the relevant target audience. I mean, lots of viewers understand this now, that you can be very targeted in your communication. Then our brands have grown over time, and we know certain markets where brand salience is high. Right? So for Happydent, for example, upcountry Maharashtra is important. Right? So we've done a lot of work in that space to figure out how to reach that audience, whether it's through their mobile, whether it's to advertising in local towns, whether it's through cable. And those guys have watched the audio, the commercial, right? We've got like 80 million views on Instagram.
Okay.
But when I talk to an audience of marketers who are all above 40, the chances are that unless they watched it on an agency fax or exchange for media or something like that, which is a marketing-led communication, let's say space, they may not have watched it, right? So, and again, even then when we were, when people came to us and said, hey, we watched your commercial, it was great for us to know as marketers, but it didn't do much for the brand. And that's the ultimate goal, isn't it?
So you're saying effectively there was a time when you would put up your ad carpet across all television at prime time, and that would mean everyone from your competing CEO to the entire marketing sort of environment, plus your audience had seen it.
Yeah.
Now you're having to choose these pockets, and you're choosing your audience who's going to buy the bubblegum or the chewing gum at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
But then are you sacrificing becoming iconic? Because you're leaving out sort of the guys who choose pop culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're putting a lot of weight on being iconic, and as a marketer, I couldn't be happier.
But you don't want to be iconic anymore?
No, I mean, I want the brand to sell. That's the ultimate goal. I mean, we don't exist in this market. Perfetti is not here to make iconic advertising. The advertising has to have an impact on brand sales. That's the ultimate proof of the pudding.
So you no longer care if your ad wins awards at advertising?
I never cared earlier, and I certainly don't care now, right? Yeah, the winning of the award is validation from, let's say, our peers, and it's always a great feeling to have, but it cannot come at the cost of brand sales. I mean, that is the reason why we exist in this country. It's for the people to enjoy our product and to gain market share and to be profitable and to make sure that the 8,000 employees in Perfetti, are it's worth something for them.
How do you decide success? Yeah. So you say, okay, we've got these many millions of views on this ad film that we've made. How are you able to correlate that directly with how many pieces of your product you've managed to sell?
If you know about this book called How Brands Grow from Byron Sharp, he's talking about physical and mental availability. So part of it is obviously taken care by the sales team who are going out and doing their job. And then it's the role of the commercial to make sure that in our category, which is high impulse, and no brand loyal customers exist, right? We don't have customers who are going shop to shop looking for Happydent.
Yeah. If they don't find it, they'll just get something else.
But first of all, I mean, so many things have to line up for us. She has to go to the shop. She has to make a selection amongst all the candies lying there, and the chewing gum, and the chips, and the Cokes and Pepsis of the world, and then make a choice. And within that is to be a brand choice. So we really need to be present in her mind to make that choice for us. And that's what these commercials do. And that's why we don't want to do advertising which is formatted, or is very benefit led or very, very specific. That's why we do advertising in hyperbole. It leads to memorability.
That brings me to the ad that you've just, or the film actually, it's 90 seconds. Yeah.
का चमका मुस्कान जगमग जहान चमका मुस्कान जगमग जहान चमका मुस्कान very 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 chunking gum very chunking gum very chunking gum very chunking gum sir very chunking gum very chunking gum very chunking gum wow
there's a fundamental about the fact that the teeth are shiny, which you have retained, but you've changed the end point in the sense that it's more about social responsibility. It's more about like don't litter and things like that. So tell me what that journey was. Did you decide, first of all, how do you, in this environment where attention spans are 3 seconds on Instagram, if you're not interesting for the first 3 seconds, people will swipe away. How do you decide, okay, let's go 90 seconds again, let's do a long form thing, let's do something that builds to a final reveal, and let's change the messaging at the end. What was that journey like?
We began with, let's say, Smile Please commercial in 2004, 2005. So it's been a journey from that Smile Please to the photographer commercial, which we did, to finally then the Palace commercial, which became all the rage. But subsequently, we've done a couple of other ads which talk about social responsibility. The communication previous to this one was, in a bus where a couple of guys were not getting up on a lady's seat.
Yes,
right? So we've already done that part, and that's the journey for us. Now, to address the second part of your question on the 90 seconds, we didn't start with this commercial, I must tell you. It was not the first idea which came on the table. There was a series of smaller films which we thought of initially, saying similar story, but similar messaging, but just short films. Yeah, and then we gravitated as the idea kind of baked over in our minds. We gravitated towards this longer format film. Actually, if you look at it from our perspective, making a long format film, especially after you have the Palace commercial, is actually very, very counterintuitive. It goes against the basic tenet that there will always be comparisons, and comparisons are extremely odious. I mean, everybody knows that there's no point in brand versus your own brand. So why do you want to make a comparison to the previous film? But we still went ahead and did it because it just came so well together.
Was there a pushback saying, नहीं ये viral नहीं जाएगा?
Actually, हम ये सोचते हैं कि if the brief is कि इसको viral बनाओ, कभी भी viral नहीं जाएगा.
Actually, that's interesting. Nobody on the internet knows how to go viral, right? It's always by chance.
Exactly. So I remember very early on, I don't know whether you remember, there was a Chlormint commercial which we had done, which was Dobara Mat Puchna.
Yes.
Yeah, in which when the guy goes to a shop, he dunks the, says Dobara Mat Puchna, Chlormint kyun wo bolta hai. So, and that time, I think it's the 2000s, it's the World Cup, I think 2006, 2008, where there was this headbutting incident. I don't know if you follow soccer, it was Zidane, headbutting. So when that happened, because nobody knew what the guy had spoken to Zidane, and we were somewhere out in the evening, and we went to the studio at night and we dubbed over it, right? Saying basically the guy said, "Hum Chlormint kyun khate?" Zidane, and stuff like that. Even then at night, it was not, the idea was to just do something cool, put it out there, and that went viral. Because that's topical. It's right there right now. I mean, with that kind of brief and so much content, nobody knows how and why virality will happen for a certain thing like this. It's always the hope. You always are thinking in terms of media monies ki yaar, if friends start sending it to you on WhatsApp, and you get to, then you don't need to spend as much because everybody's seen the commercial. But yeah, that's more and more of a pipe dream.
So actually, tell me this, because we all remember those World Cups, whether it was the football or the cricket. When the whole family, you knew the fact that there was silence across the country, that everybody was watching. Is there anything else other than IPL right now that's delivering those eyeballs to people in marketing? No. And does IPL have enough inventory for all of you? Or is it just being crowded out by the fantasy cricket ads?
Yeah, it's an unpopular opinion, but I don't think even IPL is, getting those kind of numbers which were coming at the time with... Yeah, it's not
Sachin Tendulkar days.
Exactly. And then with that kind of money and spend, and look at the people who are advertising on IPL. I mean, they're all investor money, which is coming through, or brands like Campa-Cola, which are, trying to break through. I mean, their mandate is very different. If you're, business as usual kind of organization, getting into the IPL as of now doesn't make sense. And we didn't do this even when cricket and those ESPN days when cricket was really popular and people used to buy test matches, right?
Yeah.
Even then we were doing, stuff like cartoons, which were basically brand cartoons. And, so even then innovation was relevant. I think innovation is relevant still. Unless you just have, potloads of money which you can throw, I don't think IPL is for everybody.
I do want to ask you this though. Another thing that struck me when I watched your film.
Yeah.
It's about, fundamentally, the message is don't litter.
Yeah.
Your product, which is a 1 rupee product, is in the litter across the country.
Yeah. Or like many others.
Like many others, but you're not responsible for the many others. Is there anything you're doing to tackle that? I mean, if I were to read out your list of products, right? Center Fresh, Mentos, Happydent,
Yeah.
Chlormint,
Yeah.
they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Your wrappers are everywhere. What are you doing?
Yeah, so I mean, that's the fundamental nature of business in our country that, because of the weather, we cannot sell candies naked.
Yeah, because
So
it's too humid.
it's too hot and it's too humid, and they don't travel, right? So like chocolates don't travel, right? So we can't sell in bags. So therefore, bag is easy to collect back. Therefore the wrapper will remain a challenge for some time. We are actually off the lot where 30% of our sales are now moving to more than ₹1 product, hoping that will change over time. But it's a slow one for us, for sure.
Is there any sort of work happening right now on making more, I don't know, sustainable wrappers?
There's a lot.
Is it possible?
There's no denying the fact that the wrapper is what it is, but at least now the wrapper has got 30% recycled content.
Okay.
The jars have got recycled content because the government mandated a certain percentage. We are already exceeding that because we understand there is need to do better for the environment. There's a rule by the government that even jars need to be collected back and kind of reused. So we are trying to figure out how we can do that, and there's a whole engagement with the government on how we can do that. It's a matter of also getting the infrastructure in place, whole circular economy behind it. So there's a lot of work happening there. I mean, I would be the last person to say that or be holier than thou and say we are good, but we are certainly better than many others, and at least there's a strong belief that there needs to be done.
Do you foresee a time when someone will be able to punch in an AI application that will be more sophisticated than what we have today and generate an ad? Or do you believe that the Piyushas and the Prasuns of the world will always be able to deliver, hand-woven excellence that AI will never be able to match?
That AI-generated ad is a reality even today.
Okay.
That's for sure. And now it's the ability of the marketer to make a call on whether he wants that or he wants curated content which is thought through multiple times, because ultimately the input for the AI is also going to be somebody who's going to feed in that line, right? It cannot generate all on its own. Now when we have creative like Piyush and Prasoon and all of these guys, they look the ad in the entirety and they see what's the messaging, where's the communication, how's the baseline landing, right? Is it relevant? Is it being disrespectful to somebody? Is it not? I think the fear with AI is that they're going to end up antagonizing people because that human element will be taken away.
Right.
Yeah, and till such time that we are sure that all of that is kosher, I don't think I would subscribe to that view at all of going there. Yeah, because there's lots to be learned still in that space.
Your Chlormint ad. It takes a human being who has bounced about the chai shops enough to know that there is a bucket of water for those beetle leaves.
Absolutely.
That you can dunk someone's head in order to be able to culturally write that scenario.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine AI ever being able to make that.
I couldn't have put it better. I fully agree with you. I mean, that's the insight. I mean, that's the kind of insight which is so relevant. And it's an unpopular opinion. I know that, we're going to talk about influencers at some point in time. I think we have to be also very careful there. We know the controversy. There's a difference between a brand influencer and a brand custodian. I think the brand custodian feels for the brand. The influencer is inward looking. He or she is looking to build their audience. And the brand takes a secondary role for them, right? It's part of their revenue or whatever you call it. And therefore, you have to be at all times making sure that the influencer is caught in the right setting, talks the right way. It's very, very difficult to do. To me, while they're relevant, obviously, you cannot ignore that. You have to be really careful. Yeah, and there's a reason why, our celebrities were called brand ambassadors.
Yeah.
And there was a whole, of course, because, you expected them to carry your brand values, right?
Okay, so if I were to ask you, do you prefer brand ambassadors or influencers? Which one would that be?
It's an apple and orange question, quite honestly. Brand ambassador, relevant when the brand needs it. We worked with Kajal for 10 years. She worked beautifully for us, right? She was an Alpenliebe. We did a series of 10 or 12 commercials with her. I think no other star would have pulled off what she did. Yeah, she had her own journey, and we translated her journey into our own, from an actress to little senior when she was a mother, and all of that, and we really did well with her. On the influencer side, I think we're not looking at the influencer, but looking at the profile of the followers and trying to see what
So that's
is the fit.
distribution.
So it's more, it's like a media choice of vehicle than a choice of the person per se, which is very different. And they both have.
So for you then, if I'm not mistaken, in the influencer choice, what you're doing is you've replaced media buying.
To some
Where there would be a person with an Excel sheet saying, okay, I'll buy some Saas Bahu, I'll buy some news, I'll buy some something else, something else, something else.
Absolutely.
And now the whole pie leads me to the audience that I want to go to. That's what you're using influencers for.
Yeah, and influencers, because they're authentic to their followers, it's relevant for sure. I mean, that they can talk about your brand, but I think people will get over time. This will get people will get cynical about it also. I mean,
Okay.
That's my view. I mean, looking 5-6 years into the future, there will be so much of this happening that then people will kind of, as soon as the influencer talks about picks out a product, they will kind of say, okay, so this is what it is.
I meet a lot of young people who feel like they have outgrown a job in 2 years.
Yeah.
Sometimes shorter than that. They're like, no, I've learned everything I need to learn here. Now I'm going on. And in my mind, how could you possibly have learned everything? It's impossible. It's humanly impossible.
Yeah.
But as someone who's done this for nearly your entire career, what is the advantage of staying in the same company for 25 years? Not in the same role, the same company.
Yeah, I think for people who change organizations, they're looking to find something which is in sync with their philosophy. Sometimes in their articulation is कि मैंने सीख लिया सब कुछ. I was lucky enough to find it earlier, and then a lot of the Perfetti way of doing things is like I want to do things myself. The elbow space to experiment, the sense of ownership, the fact that you can make mistakes and not be bothered. So that's been my learning, that people often are looking for that to happen in their life. In my case, there's so much of sync with the way I like to work that I stayed on in the same organization. I agree. It's a very difficult conversation with people that in 2 saal sab kuch seekh liya. Because also I think that there's a level of grit which is sometimes missing, where people just need to sometimes say, okay, you're not getting a promotion this year, let's just put our head down and work. And that really helps you in the long run, because if you look at it in short periods of time, you see yourself being stuck. But if you look at it in a duration of a 25-year-old career, you will realize that in the tough years, when you were minding your own business and doing work as usual, is when you made the most impact to your career and your growth prospects. It's not the time when I didn't get a promotion when a great ad came out. It never did, right? But the grit and the tough times where you put your head down and say, okay, let's back to the wall, turn around needed. That's when the magic happened. And I don't think you can do that by, if you go to a different job in 2 years' time, that gravitas will not come, because you're in the learning phase. So I think that's a little bit different again.
So give me an example, or tell me about a tough time that you had.
Even in India, when we were taking price hikes on Alpenliebe, which was really tough for us to do in 2015, 2016, much ahead of the confectionery category. It was extremely tough those 3, 4, 5 years. Knowing fully well that it was the right thing to do. But somebody had to press the button. As market leaders, it was important for us to do it. But what it did, we were dominant in the Alpenliebe HBC space. But what it did was allowed us to then say, okay, this ain't happening right now because consumers have the 50p option. Where else can we grow? That's what brought about the jellies. That's what brought about the growth spurt in Center Fresh and Center's Fruit. Because then there was a need to say, okay, this is a slow burn. It'll take time. What else can you do? And look at us now in hindsight. One of the smartest things we did was to do that and take away the reliance from the 50 paisa price point and grow business profitably.
If I read correctly, you did experiment with the idea of reducing the grammage of the of the confectionery instead of dropping the price, because you believe the price point was most.
I think we are like, I mean, it's the notion which I want to address now is, everybody in this food business, their first instinct is to get economies, and see whether they can get better production P&L results so that they can, pass on the benefit to the consumer. But at a certain point in time, with the commodity prices the way they are, there will be a shift to reduce weight, right? And certainly all of us doing that. But at a certain point in time, you do believe that there is a time to switch and jump. So, Coke, from the time I have consumed it, I'm going to betray my age, was 2 rupees a bottle. Yeah. I was amazed to find that a 150 ml Coke or Thumbs Up is 20 rupees now in the span of 25 years, right? The candy which I was consuming at 50 paisa is gone to a rupee. All candy in India is a rupee now, with the exception of, I think, Vicks.
You also pushed the idea of that 1 rupee candy.
Yeah.
And my understanding is it took you from 5% to 30%
Yeah.
of your market share. Tell me that story.
No, I mean, we were big, but we were about 18 to 20% at the time. The 50 paisa candy was a large part of that business, right? When we went to a rupee, obviously sales came down because, the distribution came down as well. And then we had to see what other categories exist at the 1 rupee price point. So the gums existed at the 1 rupee price point. They started growing. Then we knew lollipops, we could charge a premium. So that went to rupees 5. Then in 2020, I think we went into the jellies category, which exploded for us, which is now the 5 rupee and the 10 rupee price points. Unfortunately for us, there is no 1 rupee 20 paisa which exists, right?
Yeah.
So, we can't take incremental price hikes. The next point of the number
It's
of
2
rupees, 2 rupees. There's not even a 3, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that change with Google Pay or with like UPI? Because now nobody's actually like counting the change.
I'm
anymore,
telling
right?
the story in so many forums. No, it does to some extent. But this whole business of candies being given for change is a story which is amplified so much that the number of time it happens and the number of times it is told is completely disproportionate.
Story is legend, but
The story is much bigger. It's like the proverbial fish. Every time you tell people that I caught the fish this size and this, it's like that. So, no, not really. I mean, our buying behavior still remains, somebody who's a kid walking back from school with 10 rupees in her pocket, and she's, for the first time in her life making a purchase decision. That's where our big consumption is, right? And there still UPI is in there. But
so not smokers who are trying to kill the smell.
children. It's children.
Just children.
Yeah, smokers are there and they're heavy consumers, but it's just for them. Smoker consumes high candy, but they're not. They're not that many for us. So the bulk of the consumption is children for us, for sure. And even if you look at smokers now, and if you stand at a shop observing them, and if they're buying a pack of cigarettes, more than likely if the guy says 43 rupees, वो बोलेगा भैया 5 कैंडी दे देता हूँ, ये 48 कर देता हूँ आपको. वो habit नहीं गया अभी भी.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean that notion also, the fact that the retailer is giving you candy is not our candy. Usually the retailer is giving a local brand because that's where the profit margins are. So we don't get that impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me something. You said that a large portion of your consumption of your product is children who are making purchase decisions maybe for the first time.
Yeah.
So how are you reaching them with your ad films and with your marketing?
I mean, typically we used to have all these kids channels earlier, which were now they don't give that kind of reach, right? So now we have to make do with what we have.
Which is?
Yeah, which is basically television and basically mobile and stuff. So obviously the children
don't have mobile.
8 years, no.
Yeah.
No. But I think more and more children are now having access to mobile even in rural towns. So you will have a 14-year-old child now in smaller parts of the country getting an old used mobile. So there is the ability to reach them. Obviously TV still remains a big portion of our spend, right? 70% of our advertising still is TV. So we are hoping that in a common viewing in household that the kid is watching the advertising.
Also in India we have a law that says that you can't target children directly when buying a product, right? So how do you work around that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our advertising, we've never really had kids in our advertising. I mean, if you look at any of the ads we make, whether it's Center Fresh, Center Fruit, Big Bubble, even Big Bubble, we never did the format, school children ad kind of thing. So that's a conscious decision. Then ultimately you make a commercial which is appealing across age groups. And the communication TG is not always the consumption TG, right? So we communicate to an older audience, and that kind of becomes aspirational. Lollipop being a case in point, right?
Yeah.
So India is always the problem that Lollipop was seen as being very kiddie, right? Nobody wanted to innovate with this. The anecdotal thing was that kids buy Lollipop and they go home and suck it because they don't want to be seen as being a kid outside, right? So we changed that whole thinking around lollipop with really cool communication where the kid was not targeted, but was just targeted at an older audience, saying it's perfectly fine. It's actually a cool thing to do. And then lollipop category kind of started growing in India. So on the back of all of that advertising which we did. So those are the kind of decisions which you need to make as a brand to make sure that you get your audience.
Actually, speaking of lollipops, I read somewhere that Chupa Chups the brand was designed by Salvador Dalí.
The logo.
The logo?
Yeah.
Is that true?
That's true.
Tell me that story.
Chupa Chups is a Spanish company. So Perfetti acquired it in 2004. It was a Spanish family-held firm. And I think Salvador Dalí at the time was a really famous artist. And I think he knew the family because I think they were from Barcelona. And they asked him to design the logo. So it's become part of our folklore now that, this is such a cool thing. Yeah.
And you've retained it because for India, you've not changed it in any way. And it works.
All of our big brands, Mentos being the biggest global brand that we have, we try and keep synergy. Center Fresh, Center Fruit are homegrown brands. So there we have the India team has the ability to, change things and, make their own.
Yeah.
But for because these brands are available in duty-free outlets and you travel abroad. So, the Mentos you get in Europe is the same Mentos you get here. The Chupa lollipop you get here is the same lollipop you get there.
I mean, your products are entirely sugar confectionery. You said targeting children. Do you foresee a point, or is that point already here, where sugar to children is a problem? You're going to have to either bring down the amount of sugar, change it. Is that a challenge that you think is coming, or is it already here?
No, it's here for sure. I think sugar to children, we are conscious, and I think lower sugar products will start coming into the market. But to put it into context, I think sugar for us, because it's still a single candy purchase, so if it's a 4-gram candy, 2.5, 3 grams of sugar, it's still within the limit of let's say daily consumption, because that's what it is. I think the bigger mandate for sugar will be where sugar is hidden.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit self-serving, but here's my spiel on it. That when you're buying a candy, you are buying. What else will it be? It is a sweet product, right? But when you're eating bread or when you're eating a ketchup, or that's where I think the bigger challenge will be. Of course, we're not going to say that candy eating is healthy. It's a small treat. But sure, over a point in time, I think the India market will also move. I think we're far away from going entirely sugarless or sugar-free. I think that's very far into the distance. But slowly and slowly, we will have less sugar products, at least making their way into e-commerce and modern trade. And people will start experimenting in those channels. That's what it also allows you right now. Before you go really mass market, you can try and test that product and its validity in smaller channels and see what kind of, because all of these will come at a price.
Does Happydent actually whiten teeth?
Yeah.
How?
It's got baking soda in it, so it is good for the teeth. That's why we claim it. Otherwise, we wouldn't.
It's got baking soda in it, and that helps whiten your teeth.
Whiten your teeth. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We talked a little while ago about spending a large amount of time in one company and one job.
Yeah.
Is it possible for you to use your experience to quantify what adds up to a good job? Because technically when you're working, you tend to look across at your peers, maybe from college, maybe from school, and you're like, oh, isne ghar kharida, isne gaadi kharida, this one went overseas. Yeah. And then you suddenly feel like, am I stuck? Am I not moving fast enough? How am I not matching up to my peers? Yeah. And that creates a certain level of nervousness, which happens in all of us. So have you ever experienced that? And then how do you measure whether you are in a job that's delivering to you or not?
Yeah, I think the first part of your question is, are you always looking up, or do you also bother to look down sometime and see there are like 50 people who are not doing as well? So is Mark Zuckerberg always looking, at Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, or also he's looking at the rest of us and saying he's doing much better? So that's the point of, I think, I can answer it from many perspectives, but also as a parent, we're, would you want to fall into the trap of telling your child that, so-and-so is doing better? You don't, right? Because now we've grown out of that and we know that comparisons are odious and people have their own journey and they blossom into who they are, whether that whatever they want to do, whether it makes financial sense or, does that happen or not is not as relevant as it what used to be earlier, right? So many more choices. For me, it's really important that, if you're getting up on a Monday and not be bothered about it, I think you're in the right place in the right job. There's so much of literature on, how to manage a Monday, and I just don't get the why it's such a big deal. Yeah, because when you're doing something which you like, you're not really switching off.
Yeah.
You're outside on a break, and but you can still your mind still tallies what needs to be done. And when you're on a Sunday or a Monday, you can still figure it out. It doesn't bother me when somebody messages me at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Simply because in my mind I process that the reason he or she is doing it because must be something relevant or important. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening.
I do know that you, and this has been written about you,
Yeah.
that you do value self-improvement.
Yeah.
You value the time you spend with your dogs. You value your off time as well. And this is again something that's really come up in conversation, right?
Yeah.
Personally, for me, when I grade a job, it's not just about am I making money that makes me feel validated, but it's also about, is this a job that gives me a sense of self-worth?
Yeah.
Is this a job that aligns with my ethical stand in life? Is it making me do things I'm uncomfortable with? Is it giving me enough time to be the person I want to be?
Yeah.
Which could be your dog, it could be your kid, it could be trekking, it could be whatever it is, makes you happy. If you were to advise a young person today, and there are a lot of people now saying that, there's not enough work-life balance and people expect us to work 70-hour weeks.
Yeah.
What's your response to that?
I think a lot of people are asking this question. It was not asked of me earlier, but on my return back from India, a lot of people are asking. My advice is not, coming back to India and the kind of environment that exists, and the kind of sheer number of people and the hard work that people put in. My advice is very simple. I'm saying, there's no doubt in my mind that, if you're working in Perfetti or HUL or PNG, you have a certain caliber, there's no doubt about it. I think what makes you stand out is the amount of time you can spend on yourself.
Okay.
And that really shows, if you are spending time on yourself to become better, to become healthier, it will reflect in the quality of work that you deliver. And my advice, therefore, to people is very simple. Stay close to work. Don't travel. Don't travel 2 hours, 3 hours away. And most people have this, that I stay with my family and, I cannot and my... But yes, if you want to make that difference, invest in your health, invest in your well-being, try and meditate, try and run a little bit, do what it takes. But, all of that will plow back into the quality of work that you deliver. Because then you will finish your work faster, then you will raise your hand for stuff which lies in the common area. And for me, that's the biggest differentiator when I need to pick people to do, key roles. Who's the person who's raised their hand and said, this is not my job, but I'll take it on. And that can only happen when you've kind of finished everything and you have time and, you're locked in and you're not feeling unwell with all of the pollution and the traffic. And, so it makes a huge difference. And that's what I tell people. And that's the only thing, there's nothing cerebral about my advice that, start reading journals and all of that is great. There's no, of course it's relevant, but this is really simple. Invest in infrastructure at home. That's also very important.
What do you mean by that?
The people around you, your help, your support staff. Invest in them, really invest in them. So that, when the chips are down, you're not fighting on 3 fronts. Yeah. We all have parents, for example, for sure. We'll need to support them. We have children, we need to support them. But there are other challenges happening all around. So if you are constantly fighting other battles, you will obviously take away from work. And, that's something which, those are my practical go-to advice to people saying, okay, there's nothing.
You started, you did an MBA in Manipal.
Yeah.
And chose marketing.
Yeah.
And you are now managing director and on the board. And I find this really fascinating because a lot of people assume that the route for marketing will not end up on the board. Yeah. It's normally the CFO, the guys who come out of finance, or the guys who come out of hard sales that wind up on the board, or the girls who come out of hard sales who wind up on the board. But it's not marketing. So tell me how you made that transition.
Yeah, so it's it's interesting you ask that question because it's a question which marketeers also ask. I think you should ask the marketer this question: that are you happy going to the general management side of things, right? And the honest answer is that we are so fixated by the idea of the title that we sometimes don't realize that the job actually is not as strategic, or it doesn't have all the bells and whistles of a core functional area. Yeah? Keep in mind that as GM or managing director, you are dealing with challenges which nobody wants to touch. You're waking up with mails which never really have any good news, right? You're only waking up with this challenge in the factory or that issue, or small things which have landed on your table simply because everybody has said this. Whereas a marketer, you're doing these cool shoots, you're meeting the cool guys, you have a consumer presentation.
You get to meet the celebrity.
You go to London and you do one course and whatever. Whereas the general manager, despite the title, is basically in the trenches, right? So many marketers, even when they make the transition, suddenly feel this is not what I signed up for. Yeah, because there's a certain hierarchy in the system. I think people believe the route is management team to general manager, but actually there's a route from management team into functional marketing roles in the organization as well. And those roles sometimes get the short end of the stick simply because the general tendency is let's go this side. So to answer your question, which marketer do you get? Do you get the marketer who believes that advertising is not the be all and end all? There is a whole supply chain to understand. There is a product knowledge to get. There is an understanding of the operations side. There is a production P&L which caters to the brand. Lots of marketers have this logic of saying if market is not on the table, who talks the consumer perspective? And my pushback is, I know what the consumer perspective, I know she wants everything, right? But which is the marketer who wants to balance the consumer perspective with the organization need? And that's the marketer who makes the transition. Yeah. Again, I also want to say that it's not one better versus the other. There's a certain personality of marketer who likes the data aspect of things, the consumer understanding part of it, and wants to be in that space and delivers great value for the organization by being in that space. Yeah. And then there's the marketer who's looking at consumer, but looking at the overall piece, who possibly makes the transition to general management a little better.
I do want to ask you this. We talked about how AI is likely to change things on the marketing front. In manufacturing, on the production line, there's now this idea that robotics is going to become so sophisticated that it will replace humans because they don't need washroom breaks, they don't need lunch breaks, and they don't unionize. And they can do really, specifically careful work. Yeah. Is that something you're seeing in manufacturing at all? Or
depends on what. Okay. So car manufacturing, yes. Yeah. Food manufacturing, I think we find it very difficult to get paybacks on automation.
Okay.
Yeah. The cost of labor in India, despite minimum wages and all of that, is still a fraction of what it costs to automate. Ultimately, the consumer will end up paying the price for whatever you do at the back end, right? So if you can manage to keep your costs under control, you can pass that benefit to the consumer. Yeah, with all of this robotics that you're talking about, these machines are incredibly expensive, right? So first of all, to take out people and put these machines means that immediately all of this cost of buying the machine and the depreciation gets passed on. It's not going to be an easy one. There are certain areas certainly where we will have some automation, secondary packing, for example, which is highly labor intensive, and there if we can get something going, definitely it will benefit. But I don't see that dramatically changing in the near term, for sure. I think many organizations, because of freight, have multiple factories, and those smaller factories, the whole point is to get a small setup and get product out to close by areas. Again, I think automation will play a limited role for in the near term. Over time, I think that may change.
I know that your product has a very, you're at the perhaps the lowest in terms of cost when someone is making a decision at a kirana store.
Yeah.
But we've been talking for maybe a year now on the fact that India's consumption is starting to slip. It's hurting many FMCG brands.
Yeah.
It'll be a while before it actually reaches or hits your consumption. Is that true?
No, we're very we're very much impacted.
Okay.
Everybody is impacted. I mean, we had this COVID bounce back. So 22, 23 were good years for most FMCGs. And I think 24, 25 are everybody is feeling the pressure. There was a whole commodity price increase which got passed on to the consumer, right, in those years. And everybody felt happy that, the Indian consumers easily digested the price hike.
Yeah.
But what it has led, obviously, that the disposable income has also gone. Whatever disposable income is there has gone into all of the inflation which has happened over the last 2 years, right? So now she is making conscious choices on what she wants to rationalize and what she doesn't. And we are at a point in time where they don't want to rationalize on the trip abroad or the car or the visible things that are visible to others. But she is more than willing to compromise on stuff which is not visible, which many mass brands, Ata for example, which is at home consumption, or other stuff which you don't need to buy branded anymore. So there's a lot of change there. I think it will change. We are seeing some initial signs of revival. Monsoon's been good. The crops have been good. So we are seeing it's early to call it yet. A full. But these are cycles which we have seen many times over. As the grey-haired marketer / whatever, we've witnessed this, and we know things will come back. It's ultimately 1.4 billion people. From a long-term perspective, nobody who's even the most pessimistic FMCG person will tell you that India is the place to be. But it's time like this when you need strong backend. You need to have the ability to look at your processes, to tighten things up, so to shore up your bottom line, so that when when there's an upswing in the market, you are at the right place at the right time with the right product. This is the time to innovate also, actually. You really can test your innovations at this point in time and see what's working. So when the consumption comes back, you're already scaled up. So a lot of that is happening right now for us as well.
All right, Nikhil, I wish you very, very good luck. And I thank you for spending time with me today.
It's totally a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.